All right, one thing I want to show you all are the quizzes. I think the quizzes are defaulting to allowing 2 tries, but I'm going to change it so that y'all have unlimited tries so you can take them over and over and over. So if you go over to, now I'm not really planning on putting due dates on the quizzes. It's just a really good idea to get the quiz done as soon as you're done with a chapter, rather than wait a bunch of time. So going into student mode, if you click on the quizzes over here, they'll also show up in an assignments tab, but fastest way to get to it is by clicking on quizzes. Really? Student view, please. Right, we're going to take a look at Chapter 2's quiz. We're just going to start it together if you feel like it, or just watch for a minute. Following quiz is open book. Are you going to abide by the rules? Yeah, you are. Okay. So, the equal sign, what is it? Is it an action operator, an assignment operator, an operation operator? I like that. Is it an operation operator? No. It's the ambivalence operator? No, I want to know what that is. All right, what does equal mean? If it's double equals, it's the equality operator, but a single one is used for assignment. The plus operator can be used for what? Ooh, I love it when all of the above isn't the bottom choice.
Yeah, it's the top choice for me.
Yeah. Does it add 2 numeric values? It sure does. Okay. This, I wish I hadn't even had y'all start this because I'm going to have to go in and modify this. But yes, it does add 2 numeric values. Yes, it does concatenate a number to a string. Yes, it does concatenate 2 strings. And all of the above. I don't think this is true. I don't think you can concatenate a number to a string, which would mean that all of the above is false. I mean, we could try it out. We can load up Visual Studio and try to add a number to a string, but this isn't Java where you can take a string and you can add a number to it and it'll convert it on the fly to being a string. I believe that not to be the case. We're not going to do the whole thing. I just wanted to get y'all into it. Operator precedence assures that certain operations will always take place before other operations. Which choice shows them correctly? Well, it's PEMDAS, except no exponent, so it's PEMDAS. Parentheses ought to be first. And then of these two, does addition and subtraction happen before or after multiplication? Just by our laws of math, if you have 6 plus 2 times 3, do you do the plus of the times first? Come on, some of y'all have had me for like 7 semesters. You know the order of operation.
Okay.
Multiplication before addition or after it?
Before addition.
Yeah. So it would be that one. All right, which is a prefix increment operator? Well, prefix kind of gives us a big hint. It's going to come in front of it. Increment, does that mean adding or subtracting? Decrementing is subtracting, so increment is going to mean adding. So which of these looks like a prefix increment operator? I know they're in the other order on your screen, but it would be that one, right? That's a prefix, and plus plus is incrementing. And I think I honed in on this once or twice already, but I'm going to mention it again. If you have the prefix increment, it means that the increment is done the very first thing in the expression before anything else is evaluated. And that can actually change the results of your calculation. If you do this, int x is equal to 3, and you do int y equals plus x, since the plus is first, x immediately becomes a 4 and then gets copied into y. So after this, y is equal to 4. But if you did the same thing, but you used plus after it, you use the suffix, the postfix. So if you do int a is equal to b, int b is equal to a plus, it means since the plus is following the variable, it means it's the very last thing that happens. Everything else in the expression happens first, and then it's incremented. So a gets copied into b, so b is equal to 3, and then a gets incremented. So after this is done, a is equal to 3, while b is equal to 4. Well, up here, the increment happened first. So this gets increased to 4 and then copied into there, and so they both wind up being 4. I got that vice versa. A got copied into B, so B became a 3, and then A was incremented, so A became 4. Hope that makes sense. I'm not going to do the rest of the quiz. Maybe I'll just eyeball it real fast. See if there's anything I want to complain about, other than that, you know, all of the above not being at the bottom. I can't quite read that. It looks like this is a misworded problem. I can't believe that I've been using the same quiz for about 10 years and haven't noticed that before. Plus minus is the, yeah, what in the world would plus minus be? I'm going to add this number and then subtract it. It's supposed to be plus equals. So on 17, feel free to scroll down there. I'm going to correct this before the rest of y'all get to see it, the viewers at home. But for y'all in here, if you have the quiz open, if you're taking it already, that is known as add and assign, right? We know what that means. Like if you have x plus equals 7, well, if x started off as 1 and then you add 7 to it and store it back into, then x becomes 8 at this point, right? Just take that number, add it to x, store it back into x. So that is called add and assign. Other textbooks call it compound operators. Maybe this textbook does as well. Notes to self. Fix problem 17 and remove that all of the above option. Because if you're supposed to do all of the above, you just select them all. Alright, so fix problem 3 and 17. When I grade them, no matter what you pick, you'll get full. I mean, not no matter what you pick. If it grades it automatically wrong, it'll get fixed. Okay. Continue to eyeball it for errors real fast. I think it's time we get to the lecture. Sometimes I give hints. How do you declare a constant? Final? No, this isn't it. This is how you do it in Java. So which of these declares a constant? This is an easy question. Const declares a constant. All right, that's about enough. Come on. Not to complain. It's amazing that no matter how fast computers get, applications get so large as to make them load slowly. And these are not new computers to begin with, so. Some students bring in their Alienware computers, you know, giant laptops that run as fast as a supercomputer. You could calculate, pi to 8 billion digits. And hurry up. I don't need to finish the quiz. All right, you can watch the lecture. Well, I guess that's true. We only had one lecture last week. One of the things I wanted to cover is I was going to do a separate lecture on the sphere density, and I didn't. So, wanted to cover it in class instead. This homework, it'll look familiar if you've taken my Java or C++ course. But I want you to do it with switch statements. The problem is what it looks like. Alright, so write a program that asks the user for a diameter of a sphere and what material it is made of, and we'll calculate and print the mass. So the program's going to prompt the user for the diameter of the sphere, choosing the options from here. I don't know why we don't just let them type it in. What if they want a sphere that's equal to 17 feet? Well, too bad. And then prompt for the material from these options. And then determine the density based on this. That's just a simple table lookup. You're going to just use the switch statement. If they chose gold, you're going to set the density to 1203. If they chose soil, you're going to set the density to 80. You're going to calculate the volume using 4/3 times pi times radius. One thing that's dumb about this is that these things are given in diameter, but the equation is based on radius. So you have to convert diameter to radius. I'm not going to wreck your grade if you don't do that, but how do you convert from diameter to radius? You just divide it by 2. So before you get to this part of the equation, you should say radius is equal to diameter divided by 2. Reminder, radius is equal to diameter divided by 2. Then you need to calculate the mass. The math almost doesn't really matter. I don't care if you understand the physics involved, because I'm giving you the equations, right? You know how to calculate the diameter. You know how to get pi. You know how to calculate the volume based on the data entered. You know how to calculate the mass based on the volume that you calculate and the density. So the second page, sample input output. Welcome to the sphere mass calculator. Isn't it funny how some words need spaces in them and others not? It's a golf space ball, but it's a baseball, no space. Anyways, welcome to the sphere mass calculator. First we pop up a little menu. And what is the diameter of the sphere? Choose from the options above. C. It'd be kind of neat if we looped and made sure that they didn't type in, an invalid letter or something like that, but I didn't specify that you have to do that. And then we display another menu full of types. What is the material? Choose from the options above. C. And then a sphere of that size and material has a volume of that and a mass of that. You can pick whatever precision you want to display. It looks like these are set to 4 decimals after the anyways. So that's the way it's supposed to work. So all you're going to do is ask for the a letter representing this menu choice, a letter representing this menu choice, and you're going to use switch statements. I mean, you could use if statements, but I'd rather use switch statements to convert, like, from marble to a diameter of 0.05. And if they choose iron, whatever the letter for iron is, if they type D, switch material, case D, density equals 491. And then run the calculations that are given up at the top. Does that make sense? I'm seeing some heads nodding. I'm seeing some. If it doesn't make sense, then we can talk about it further. Right. Send me questions as you start to ask, work on it. I didn't backdate the due date of it. It's due a week from today, not sometime in the past due to the last lecture. So the conditional operator, some people call it the ternary operator because it is the only ternary operator. All right, what does ternary mean? Well, if we remember what a binary operator is, it's one that takes two pieces of data in order to do its job. Almost everything is a binary operator. Plus and minus and multiplication and division and the equal sign and the double equal sign. Why do I say it's a binary operator? Because in order to add something, you have to have two pieces of data. Plus sign is the operator. 3 and 7 are the operands. And so if you need to calculate, to see if something is equal to each other, if 4 is equal to 5, then what's the operator? It's double equal. What are the operands? 4 and 5. So binary operator has two operands. That's what binary means. There's also like a couple of unary operators. Unary meaning one. Mostly the minus sign. I can't think of very many others. Minus sign and plus plus and minus minus. Right? Like A plus plus. That's a unary operator because it only takes one operand. Same deal for minus. Minus minus B. It's a unary operator because it only takes one operand. And the minus sign, the hyphen in front of a number makes it negative, right? So these unary operators take, okay, this was supposed to be operands when I wrote it down. A unary operator has two operands. A unary operator takes one operand. So minus 1, what is the operator? The minus sign. And 1 is the operand. Here, what's the operator? Plus plus. Plus plus is the operator. And A is the operand, the data upon which it works. And minus minus B. That's the operator. Is this a prefix decrement or a suffix or postfix? It's a prefix decrement. And since it comes first, it means it would be the very first thing that happened if it was part of a larger complex expression. And so in this case, B is the operand. Ternary operator's got three things. It's a conditional operator. Some languages have it, some don't. Works like this. What if you wanted to set something equal to cold if the temperature was less than 50 and warm otherwise? Like what if you had this? If temperature is less than 50, the description is equal to cold, else the description is equal to warm. Took 4 lines of code. And yeah, we could delete some line returns and try to get it down. But here's another way you could do it. Description equals, and then put your condition. And you actually don't have to put the parentheses, but I think that it makes the syntax easier to read. Temp less than 50 in parentheses. Question mark. What the question mark means is evaluate this expression. The question mark is the conditional operator. Evaluate this in expression. And if this expression is true, then return the first value after the question mark. Else, return the value after the colon. These 2 lines of code do the exact same thing. One is easier to read, in my opinion. That's real clear, right? That's how we've been doing our programming all along. But this works, right? Check the temperature. Is it less than 50? Yes. Then description equals cold. Else, description equals warm. You just have to kind of get used to it, and you can read it pretty quickly. You don't need the parentheses here for it to work. You can remove them. I like putting the parentheses around it because it makes it look like the if statement. It's not necessary at all. I'm going to go ahead and put them back. So, right line. If the test expression is greater than 60, we're going to write that they passed. Else, we're going to write that they failed. It's like this is an if statement. and this is the else statement, right? Kind of like that says if then, and this said else. Test score greater than 60, then pass, else fail. You know, otherwise, how would you do all this in one statement? How would you get that print statement to work? You wouldn't be able to do it. You might have to have two if statements, one that wrote, you know, pass, else, wrote, fail. Take 4 lines of code. The not operator, see exclamation mark. We've already seen and or, not just reverses the truthiness of it. If you do this, you know, if parentheses not temperature greater than 50 in parentheses, it means check to see if the temperature is greater than 50, but reverse its value after that. So, if that is true, and we're going to write hooray at this point, what if temperature is equal to 70? Is it going to print hooray or not? Let's find out. Come up here, ignore the not first. We got to do this part. Is 70 less than 50? Somebody give me a big yes or no as to whether 70 is less than 50.
Yes.
Yeah, no. 70 is not less than 50, so this is false.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. And then it's a not, though, and the not changes it to true. And so it would write hooray. Now, I try to avoid nots in cases like that because you could rewrite this as this. If temperature greater than equal to 50, write hooray. Logically, those are identical statements. They mean the exact same thing. Which one's easier for you to keep track of in your brain? I think that one is, rather than having to do the not there. Kind of throws the brain into knots to have to be thinking about, you know, things being, you know, it's not opposite day. But you can do it like that if you feel like it. So you could say, okay is equal to, you know, if the patient's temperature is less than 98 degrees. Right. And then you could say if parentheses not okay. Not C out, this is not C++. Right. Patient has a fever. See what happened? This condition was evaluated. It was stored in a variable, Boolean variable, and then we took the not of it. We took the opposite of it as our if statement. So, if the patient has a temperature of less than equal to or greater than 98, we're going to say that they have a fever. Why don't we make that a 99? And I'm sure you all know that temperatures are not that precise in the human body. Some people walk around with an average temperature of 96 or 95, and other people's is like 99 or so, 100. Anyways, so the not operator converts true to false and vice versa, which is true to false and vice versa. It has higher precedence than and or. And has higher precedence than or, for reasons we've already talked about. And so if you were going to read this expression, if A and not B or C, just to make things hard, I'd fire you if you wrote this. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, this is the first thing that happens. It has the highest precedence, just like multiplication has higher precedence. So if this was false, it would become true. If this was true, it would become false. So let's make up some values. Let's say A is true, B is true, and C is false. Is this going to happen? Is this going to evaluate to true or not? Well, let's find out. B is true, but then not turns it into a false. So at this point, I'm just going to copy and paste it and make that change. All right, and then and as higher precedence than or, so we do this one. A is true. Is true and false. Is that a true or false? If it's and, both sides have to be true, or both sides true here.
No.
One of them is, the other is not.
No.
And so at this point, after the evaluation of the second operator, this side evaluated to false, and then C is a false, and so false or false. Is that true or false? Well, for false, for or to work, one or the other sides have to be true. Neither side is true, right?
Yeah.
So the whole thing is going to evaluate to false. Common errors when making decisions. Most frequent errors, using single equal rather than double equal. Yeah. I think C# even counts it as a syntax error. We've already tested that, I think. Let's find out. New project. Just do your normal business. Pick whichever one's right. Don't follow me exactly because you're using a different version of the library than I am. What's our lecture? What's our library? Our assignment. We are on lecture. Yeah. So we're on H. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. C# lecture H. Alright, so string S equals quote Bob, end quote, if S equals single equal Joe, in parentheses, or end quote in parentheses, CW tab tab, right line. Yes. And it is giving me a syntax error. Thank you, C#. C++ does not count that as a syntax error. And if you write that line of code, then during the execution of this if statement, S gets erased and replaced with that value, destroying your prior data. So I'm glad that Java and C# do not support that syntax, nor does Python. Comment that out because that was clearly an error. Error, must use ... Can't use the assignment operator, you have to use the equality operator. Inserting a semicolon after the Boolean expression in an if statement. And when you take the Chapter 4 quiz, I've already warned you about that, but it's got several questions along those lines. Something to this effect. If parentheses S equals quote Bob, end quote, in parentheses semicolon, it looks good if your brain has become convinced that you have to put semicolons everywhere. And then CW tab tab, quote, A. We're going to print out an A. We can already tell something's up because it didn't tab. And then underneath here, we're going to do console, or CW console right line B. And the quiz question would be, what is it going to print? Is it going to print A or B or AB? Give me a little warning here. Possibly mistaken empty statement. Okay. If we had it tabbed out incorrectly, we would think that since S is equal to Bob, that it would print out A conditionally. And what if S was not equal to Bob? What if we put this something to, back to being about Joe? Is S equal to Joe? True or false? No. So, at first glance, we might think it's going to print an A. No, that is not going to print an A. Because this is false, then don't do that. Just run down here and print B. That's what we might think. However, with the semicolon there, the way it treats that is like that. If S is equal to Joe, do nothing. And then later on, print out A. And then print B. So it would print out both of those. So big error is putting a semicolon after any kind of logical construct, whether it's an if or a while or a for or a switch. Anytime you put a semicolon on the same line as your logical construct, it's going to be bad. In the case of if, it's merely not going to do this conditionally. It's going to do that all the time. In the case of a while, it's even worse. It'll just be an infinite loop. Syntax error. Well, not a syntax error, but bad logic. I'm just going to say error. Don't put semicolons after ifs. Same is true for while, for, do. That makes sense. Do I actually need to run it to prove that it's going to print both A and B? Let's go ahead and do that. And I forgot to put my read key at the bottom. Console dot read key or read line. Just to get it to pause for a moment. All right, and it did print AB. You might think the above code would only print B, but will print A followed by B. And failure to include a complete Boolean expression on each side of and or. What does that mean? What if you want to check to see both uppercase and lowercase? Lots of people want to write it like this. If S equals quote, Bob lowercase end quote, or looks great. Looks like great syntax. But it's not. Why? The things on either side of or have to be complete Boolean expressions. That would evaluate to true or false. Great. And then what? True or Bob. That's not an expression that can be evaluated. It's ridiculous. So you can't do that. If you did that, if S equals Bob or quote Bob, capital B, that's an error. So I'm going to comment that out. Must be written as if parentheses S equals quote lowercase Bob or S equals quote uppercase Bob. Both sides of and or must be complete expressions. So a range check. It's a series of if statements that determine whether a value falls within a specified range. If the sales amount is greater than 1,000, set the commission rate equal to that. If the sales amount is greater than 500, set the commission rate to that. If it's less than $4.99, set the commission rate to that. So if they sold $1 million, we'd want them to get the highest commission rate. Is $1 million greater than 1,000? Yes. So rate gets us to 8. Then we go to the next statement. If sales amount is greater than 500, well, $1 million is also greater than 500, so the commission rate would be reset to 6. And so our $1 million salesman or woman would then get shafted on their commission rate. Right. These need to be made mutually exclusive. They need to be made else ifs. Or they had darn well better be worded in the correct, order. You should check for the lower one and then the higher one, but else if is a far better way of doing it. If sales greater than 1,000, then the rate is equal to 0.8. Else, if sales is greater than 500, then the rate is equal to 0.6. Else, the rate is equal to the lowest one, 5%. Right. That'd be the correct way to do it. So don't leave off your else's if you're trying to make mutually exclusive statements. And what do I mean by mutually exclusive statements? Ones that kind of work the same way as switch case statements. That it can do one and only one of all the choices offered, and it will always do at least one of them. Right? You want it to either that or that or that. That was our goal. And so by writing it with if, else to handle all of our cases, we ensure that the rate either gets set to that one or that one or that one, and not mistakenly set to multiples, as was the case here. That's what that's showing. So problem. Print an error message which employees' hourly rate is less than $5.65 and their hourly pay rate is greater than 60. Well, that's impossible. If I read this like a programmer, I would want it to be written like this. Print an error message when the pay rate is lower than $5.65 or when it is greater than 60. And why do I say that? Because as a programmer, I think that if you see the word and, it means both cases, right? And so we're going to print an error if it's less than that and it's greater than that. And is that even possible? No, it's not possible for the hourly pay rate to be lower than $5.65 and greater than 60. So I would quibble with the way this was written. But that's the way people speak in English, right? I wanted to print an error under these cases. I wanted to print an error if the pay rate is less than $5. I wanted to print an error if it's greater than 50, right? So not everybody's a programmer, so this is written in colloquial English. It's just not written as a good programmer spec. Now I'm not going to try to trip you up like that. So using and or appropriately, you just have to figure out what the requirements are, and then you can pick whether the logic is and or. If it's one or the other, you use or. If both of them flat out have to be true before it'll trigger, then you use and. And then not. Make sure that the sales code is not A or B. There's two ways of writing that. One is if sales code not equal to A and sales code not equal to B, the discount is equal to 10. That works. I never can remember the name of the mathematical law that is just about to be demonstrated here. But if you want to use the not, if you want to move the not outside of it, then you reverse that from being an and to an or. So if not sales code equals A or sales code equals B, then give the discount of 10. These mean the same thing. We could work it through in our head. If the sales code is A, we don't want them to get a 10% discount. That's the way this is worded. Because if it's not an A or a B, we want them to get a 10%. So if it's a C, we want them to get a 10%. So we come in here. If sales code is not equal to A, is C not equal to A? That's true. And sales code is not equal to B, is C not equal to B? That's also true. Then the discount is set appropriately. Now let's look at this one. Same thing. Our sales code is C, so we want a discount of 10. Let's see if it works. If sales code equals A, is C equal to A? No, that's false. Or is sales code equal to B? No, C is not equal to B, so that's both false. And so when we OR those together, false or false is false, and then that would change it into a true. And so that's a true statement. They would get their correct discount. Don't do it this way. If sales code is not equal to A or sales code not equal to B, that can never be true. I can't work that through in my head. Nots are too hard for my logical, my brain to parse. So I can't prove that that would never be true. But I know that it certainly does not match the problem specified. So decision-making issues in graphical user interfaces. Making a decision within a method is no different from making one in a console app. You can use if else, switch, And so GUI programs use controls to make decisions. The user clicks on a button, which causes an event to fire, which calls that method, or the user chooses one of several radio buttons, or the user chooses an item from a list box. So for example, enter the patron age, enter the movie rating, then we try to figure out if they get a discount. If the age is 11 and the rating is G, they get a discount. What about the 10-year-olds? Why don't they get a discount? I don't know, but that's the problem the way it's worded. So the code, the method for the discount button, when you double clicked it and you added a method, you'd have to read in the patron age into a string, and then you could convert it to a number. Then you'd have to read in the movie rating, and then you'd have an if statement. If age equals 11 and rating equals G, then give a discount. So we read in the results of text box 1 and convert it to an int, and so that becomes age. Convert.toInt32, the contents of the text box 1. And then text box 2, we read that in and we store it in rating. And then if the child is less than the child's age, or the, well, these rules are certainly a lot different. No, that's just some. This message is not generic. It's not specifically 11. It's based on whether they're a senior or not, or whether they're a child or not. Seniors and children get bonuses as defined upon this. A child is 12 or younger, and a senior is 65 or older. And so if the age is less than child, or the age is greater than or equal to senior age, and the rating is equal to G, why did they put this inside parentheses? Because and has higher precedence than or. And so to force this part of the expression to get evaluated first, we had to put parentheses around it. Output label.text discount applies. Otherwise, print full price. So a summary. What's a flow chart? Yeah. Use an if statement to make a single alternative decision. That's true. If age less than 6, print preschool. When you make a dual alternative decision, you can use if else. Make sure they're mutually exclusive, one or the other. When you can keep chaining if else's, as many as you need. And then the conditional and operator determines whether two expressions are both true, whereas or determines whether one of two expressions are true. And then use the conditional or operator when you want some action to occur when one or the other or both of two conditions are true. And takes precedence over or, not takes precedence over them all. The switch statement tests a single variable against a series of exact matches. And the conditional operator is used as an abbreviated if-else. So, lastly, use the not operator to negate a Boolean expression. Negate means just take the opposite of it. So if something is true, it turns it a not, false. Vice versa. If you have if age less than 17 and that evaluates to true, then if not age less than 17 would evaluate to false. So if age is 10, then this would evaluate to true, and this would evaluate to false. Looks like we don't have much sample code going on today. All right, the homework's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be something that you do. No, wait, we can't do it. Decido is about to take you to works for Java and Python and not C#, so that's not going to work. I'll have to rethink what I was going to have y'all do. Drats. Yeah, there's a site called codingbat.com with coding logic problems. and the logic. C# is different enough from Java that I'm not going to be able to assign these to y'all. Too bad. I'm unhappy about that. So at this point, we know enough. We have gone far enough in our lectures that if you went to the quizzes, you should be able to do the Chapter 2 and the Chapter 4 quiz. There is no Chapter 3 quiz because that was over graphical user interfaces, and I'm not even going to ask any questions over that. I mean, let's go take a look and see if I'm lying about that. Is there a Chapter 3? No. Go straight from 2 to 4. That's cool. Just a sec. Well, you know what? I might just steal some of these and make them homework problems. For example, sleep in. We get to sleep in if it's a weekday, and, or I should say, or, if we are on vacation. So we sleep in if it's not a weekday, or we are on vacation. Return true if we get to sleep in. Well, let's reword that. Ask the user if it is a weekday, wire in. Then ask them if we are on vacation. Wire in. If we are on vacation, or it is not a weekday, print sleep in. Else print wake up. Else print wake up early. So that's problem 1. Next one, monkey trouble. We have 2 monkeys. A smile and B smile indicate if each one is smiling. Now, when both monkeys are smiling, we're in big trouble. Or if neither one of them is smiling, we're in big trouble. But things are okay if only one of them is smiling. So problem 2. Ask the user if monkey 1 is smiling, Y in. Ask the user if monkey 2 is smiling, Y in. If both monkeys are smiling, or if neither monkey is smiling, print big trouble. Else print no trouble. We don't have small trouble when it comes to monkeys. It's either big trouble or no trouble. So, given 2 int values, return their sum unless the 2 values are the same, in which case return double their sum. So problem 3. Ask the user for 2 numbers, for 2 values, x and y. If the values are the same, print 2 times x times y, else print x times y. I think of one more of these would be about enough. All right, we have a loud parrot. The hour parameter is the current time hour in the range 0 to 23. We are in trouble if the parrot is talking in the hours before 7 or after 20. Return true if we are in trouble. Okay. So problem 4. Ask if the parrot is talking ask what hour it is in the range 0 to 23. If the parrot is talking, and the hour is either before 7 in the morning or after 20, then print parrot trouble. Else print no parrot trouble. Hope this one's worded well enough. If the parrot is talking and the hour is either before 7 or after 20, I hope that's worded clearly. Right, because if it's too early in the morning and the parrot's talking, then it's a problem. If it's after, 10 o'clock at night, well, 8 o'clock at night and the parrot's talking, we're in trouble. All right. Does make sense, guys? Simple simple logic problems using and or and if and else. Look okay? Hope so. All right.